So welcome back to part 2 of the oil viscosity videos. The purpose, what I'm trying to accomplish now is determine different viscosities of different oils for different operating temperatures of thermostats, different thermostats, and try to see which oil gives the best results in terms of engine performance. So what I was saying is that I'm expecting this 15W40. The 40 classification is just hot. It's the second number is a classification for the oil when it's hot. So they're different. They're still different classifications. The W stands like what I like to think of as winter. So that's a cold. That's the viscosity of the oil determined when it's hot, but it's not really comparable to the first number, sort of, so to speak. What I'm trying to say is, this is single grade 30 oil, for example. But just because it's single grade doesn't mean that it will stay in this viscosity. It obviously will not. Regardless of the oil, it will become thinner as it gets hotter. The only difference between this one is what I think is that it stays. Both the viscosities are the same, labeled the same sort of thing. So basically, a 1530, for example, a 15W is not the same as a 15, right? So same as a 20W is not exactly the same as just a 20. But anyways, that's a whole different topic, whole different thing. You'd have to do a lot of scientific research on that. But what I'm predicting is that this single grade 30 oil here will be much more viscous, much thicker than this 15W oil in this temperature. But if this was if you were in a really warm day, a really hot day, I'd expect this oil to be thicker because the second number is higher. It's a 40. So that the hot classification, hot temperature classification, is a 40, which is higher than the 30. But this is an experiment, so. I made a prediction. Maybe it's true, maybe it isn't. Only one real way to find out. Just clean this up here a bit. Well, that's easy to do it. When you're by yourself. It's a bit of 15W40 there. I think I have more oil here. Give me 1 second. It's black. what the hell I did here. There we go, single, grade 30. It's clear, so it's never been used. So there are other people that really take these tests to the next level, and they measure exactly what the temperature is and how far the oils travel, and then they heat up the oils to a certain temperature and measure their viscosities. Me, I'm just trying to do a basic test, much more primitive, so I can determine which oils are better for me. So basically, you just flip the jars over and see which oil moves faster. And then which one goes back down the fastest. The 30 still seems to be less viscous than the 15W40. They are pretty close though. I'm just going to hold them here, and then I'm going to tip them down at the same time. Thirty's definitely going a bit farther. Than the 15W40. So in practice, I think I'm still going to get too high of an oil pressure when the engine is turned on. Which is not good. 60 psi when I turn the engine on is, I think it's too high. Which means that the oil is like this. It's like honey. It's not really flowing. So if this is inside the engine, it's not really getting where it's supposed to. That's the 30. Yeah, that 15W40 is definitely thicker, even when it's cold. Again, that's 30. Pretty close though. Looks like I've got a bit more oil on the 30. Put a bit more oil, I think. But anyways, I just thought it would be an interesting experiment, and So I'm hoping this is, I still have to do a part 3 of the video, so my next idea is to change out the thermostat. So right now in the car I have the 30, I have the single grade 30 oil in the car, and I'm getting 60 psi as soon as I turn the engine on in these freezing temperatures, and then it drops to about 10 psi on once the engine is hot, and that's with the 180 Fahrenheit thermostat. So the next step is to either change the oil or change the thermostat. I'm going to change the thermostat first because it's easier. So I'm going to change the thermostat, and what should change, my expectation is that the temperature the difference, the pressure will change only when the engine is hot, because the initial temperatures are still the same. So I should still get the 60 psi on cold start, but then since the engine is operating at 195 Fahrenheit, which is 15 Fahrenheit above the 180 Fahrenheit, I expect that oil will become even thinner, which might not be a good thing. I've heard a lot of people talking about losing their engines because the weather was too hot and their cooling system wasn't being able to cool down the engine, so the oil got excessively hot, and then it got excessively thin, and instead of it was no longer able to provide sufficient clearance between the moving parts. Another thing that I would have to do is to measure the oil temperature. However, I don't have a gauge on the oil yet, so that will be the next step in the next videos. So I'm just hoping this helps somebody, and especially me. I'm trying to determine, scientifically, which oil gives me better performance. According to the manual, in this temperature, I should be using 5W20, I think. So for sure these oils are probably too thick. For sure, probably. Terrible words. But if the engine, what I think is that as long as the engine is able to pump that oil, we should be good. And I will have to open up the engine, the oil pan sometime, and inspect the bearings. I want to make sure, my rebuild went well. But since the pressure is really high, that means the engine is still good. Right, so stay tuned, I guess, if you want, for the next part of these videos, which won't be anytime soon, I don't think. Because I still have to install the temperature gauge. So see you next time.